And welcome in, everybody. We are back for Belly Up Fantasy Live with Belly Up Fantasy and Gaming. We appreciate y'all so much for joining us. We are so back in football season. Preseason's underway. Training camps are up. The clips are taking over social media that has us all overreacting to a single rep and one-on-one and everything in between, which means it is the perfect time for us to talk about fantasy bets and everything in between as we move forward. We got a packed show today. I'll be joined by my co-host Kelcey, Brian from 3rd and 10, as well as senior fantasy and Belly Up writer Kevin Wilson. We'll talk about all things from Dynasty to college to bets, and we're going to talk some rankings too, because what is a fantasy show without rankings in the summer? And you know, that's where we're going to go get started. We're going to begin our summer ranking series with everybody's favorite position besides kickers. We're going to talk about tight ends. So I'm going to give you the top 10 tight end rankings that I have for me. Be sure to let us know down below which ones you agree with, which ones you disagree with. And be sure to check out Kevin Wilson's article coming out this week, where he's going to go into tight end rankings and values specifically about where you should take them and when they're useful. See how they very, very dramatically differ from mine, minus a couple that are pretty steadfast. But let's go and get into how I'm going to look at this. We're going to start things off with a bang. Isaiah Likely at tight end number 10. The reason he's so high is because the tight end position is not very deep. The more you look at it, the more it's like, well, there's a couple guys, then there's a couple more guys, and then there's a lot of we're taking a flyer. George Kittle would normally take this spot, but I do worry about him coming back from the injury. I know he's on track to play week 1. He's even running now, but that substation is a menace, and I refuse to take anyone from the 49ers, especially one already pre-baked in with injury. Isaiah Likely, in those games without Mark Andrews, he was tight. When he was the tight end 1 in Baltimore, he got you about 13 points per game and scored 6 touchdowns in 9 games. We already know he's a great athlete. Harbaugh loves his ability to get involved in the run game. Dart, we saw last year in the limited action. He got the tight ends involved. Theo Johnson scored five of his 6 career touchdowns after we got Jackson Dart in the lineup. And I think we're going to see Isaiah Likely fill a lot of that role, especially as Malik Neighbors recovers, which I think he might be 100%. He's trolling us, but I digress. Regardless, Isaiah Likely is as the 10th overall tight end as of now going into the season. Number 9, Sam Laporta. Kind of weird to have him down here, but he's in the same vein of I worry about the pre-baked injuries. He was tight end 1 as a rookie. The injuries have really slowed him down a lot. He's been in top 5 in 4 of those last 6 weeks before the injury last year. He's been in top 10 in targets, so he's going to get opportunities. But there's a lot of mouths to feed in Detroit. We know how much they love Jahmyr Gibbs, and they just paid him a lot of money to give him the ball a lot. Amon-Ra St. Brown is Mr. Consistency. What I do like is Drew Petzing, the new offense coordinator. Well, the last time he was calling plays, Trey McBride set all-time tight end records. So that could parlay very nicely into here. But Sam Laporta will sit at number 9 for now until I'm assured that the injuries are away and that there's going to be enough balls to go around. Harold Fannin Jr., number 8. This is through no fault of his own whatsoever because, well, he's a Cleveland Brown. If you put him on if you gave him a different helmet, he might even be higher because he's outstanding. Get him the ball in open space. He's a yak machine. He finished as tight end 6 with 2 top 2 finishes last year and was 5th in targets. And this is with Tweedledee, Goober, and the Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kids playing quarterback for him. Literally anybody could suit up at this point. He's able to pull that off. I expect him to finish. He's a guy you do want to draft. You do want to draft him. You do want to look for him. He's not somebody you settle for. He's somebody you go and get. But if their quarterback situation moderately stabilizes or one of them surprises everybody in the world, then he could very easily climb up this list. Let's look at number 7 in the old reliable Travis Kelce. And I like to say he is a victim of his own success. He still is finishing as a top 10 tight end right now. He was even tight end 5 last year, if I'm not mistaken. The problem is he used to be overall player 5 or overall top 10 player. So unfortunately, he has set the standard too darn high that when he comes back to earth and is human and looks like he's running in molasses sometimes, you end up thinking he's washed. But really, he's still a wildly effective tight end. He's going to get elite volume. He's had the 4th most targets and yards amongst tight ends last year. Patty's coming off the injury. They got a very favorable strength of schedule for tight ends. So he could be a very discount tight end 1 with room to go up, depending. And I know everyone worries about Rashee Rice. I do not, because I do not trust Rashee Rice as much. I do not trust him to drive me anywhere, let alone to stay on the field for a full 17 games. So we're going to take some Travis Kelce stock. Kyle Pitts, resurging amongst everybody's ladder just because of the amount of the playoff games he won last year with his epic 46-point performance against the Buccaneers. I'm ready to be hurt again. That's the best way to describe it with Kyle Pitts. His numbers have been going up steadily in many cases. Last year, he had 88 catches for 928 yards and 5 touchdowns, 11 and 3 in that Week 15 explosion, as I mentioned. Kevin Stefanski, the new head coach, we know how much he likes to feature tight ends. He had David Njoku in a Pro Bowl at one point. He's one of the easiest strength of schedules for tight ends, especially during the playoffs. So I'm willing to try Kyle Pitts again, even if I miss out on some of these top 5 guys. I'm going to be hurt and I'm going to be mad, but I'm willing to take my chances because I think there is definitely something there. All right, now we're getting to the good ones. Tucker Kraft. He's only a sleeper because he's injured. If he wasn't injured, he would probably be higher up on this list, but now he's considered a sleeper. An incredible pace to start last year. He had multiple tight end 1 finishes, tight end 2 overall at the time of his injury, 6 touchdowns in 8 games. One of the best yak tight ends in the NFL. He's very young George Kittle-esque when you get the ball in his hands. If he's healthy in that passing offense, he's going to get a lot of options, a lot of action off of play action. He gets involved in the flats, the crossing routes. And they shortened up the overall weapons room. They paid Christian Watson a whole lot of money. They paid Jaden Reed less, but a decent amount of money, and let Romeo Doubs, Dontavian Wicks, and some of those guys go. So I expect them to really hone in on the weapons they have instead of the last couple of years where it's just any given week, whichever one you pick, you're wrong. I think this time we're going to have some certified Packer weapons that you can trust on week-to-week basis. Matthew Golden still pending. All right, Colston Loveland, number 4. This might be a little bit of a hot take. I know some people have him as arguably tight end 2 or 3, but I think he's going to be awesome. He was very slow last year, but he ended it with a bang. From week 9 onwards, he was the tight end 2 overall, getting 12 targets a game, continued that into the playoffs. He was 3rd amongst all tight end in yards per catch and scored 6 touchdowns in very limited time. Year 2, Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, I think he's going to be fully unleashed. I think he's going to be the primary target in that offense. I know everyone talks Luther Burden, Roma Dunze, etc. I think it's going to run through Colston Loveland in many ways. Him and tight end 3 are very interchangeable, but I do expect some big things from him. Tight end 3, though, I do have Tyler Warren. Before the quarterback injuries and the epic team collapse of one of the most ridiculous collapses we've ever seen, he was still top 10 tight end in 7 out of the first 10 weeks as a rookie. Still finishing as tight end 5 overall because of the volume and ending 3rd amongst tight ends in targets and 5th in yards. Michael Pittman's vacating well over 100 targets. A lot of options there. If Daniel Jones is cleared, he's healthy. That's not something you would ever normally correlate with being good for a pass catcher, but for some reason in this case it is. So I do think with healthier QB play, I expect him to pick up where he left off last year. I'm looking for high-level volume production, plus potential rushing opportunities. Former quarterback, former fullback, former running back, former offensive weapon. Get him on the field. They've lined him up all over the place. He's going to have a lot of opportunities. I think Alec Pierce has not practiced yet, and there's rumors of him getting shots in his ankles that the GM had to dispel. Josh Downs is battling a groin injury. Somebody's going to have to catch the ball at some point. And so far, he's the only one that stays healthy. So we are buying Tyler Warren stock. Not a whole lot of surprise at 2 and 1, so we'll go through them kind of quickly. We have Trey McBride at number 2. He was tight end number 1 last year by over 140 points. The tight end 2 was closer to tight end 9 than he was to Trey McBride. The gap was so huge. It was a historic season. Top 3 overall in the league in targets, touchdowns, receptions. His volume will decrease a little bit, I imagine. Michael Wilson emerging. Jeremiah Love's arrival. Tyler Algier ruins everybody's fantasy lives, and he's there now. Plus, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. will start to be – I think we'll start to see him break out a little bit more finally. Still an elite fantasy choice. Still got to take him in the second round. I expect him to cook again. Yeah, to everybody's surprise, Brock Bowers is number 1. Injuries kind of crushed him after he broke out in 2024 as a rookie. Took him out for 5 games, and he's still averaged 15 points per game in limited action. 44-point outburst in week 9. Won a lot of huge games that week. And he's still top 3 in yards per route run. More stable offense. Mendoza / Kirk Cousins, you can't really tell the difference between them, but one of them is going to be out there. Is going to be a much more stable getting the ball. Clint Kubiak's offense is going to be a lot more stable. Tyler Linderbaum in the offensive line is going to be much less of an open gate. Ashton Genty's going to get the run game going. Huge bounce back from Brock Bowers. So we do have that is how we have 4 tight end. And yeah, as we can see, soon to hear from Kelcey's chatting saying that Isaiah Likely will feed his family this season. So I guess we know what he will be drafting. 4 tight ends. But, without further ado, why don't you just hear from the man himself, as Kelcey, my co-host from High Low Sports, is going to join us. You were going to talk college fantasy football, but let's touch on this a little bit, Isaiah Likely, because this has been a podcast favorite, and it looks like you're all in on Isaiah Likely. It looks like screw the top 9. We're getting Isaiah Likely in round 11.
Yeah, man. Athleticism, it will prove itself to be the case with Likely. I mean, look, you look at the Giants, you look at their receiving core. Outside of Neighbors, it's not the most wonderful receiving core. You put Likely in there, he's your number 2. He's a safe number 2 in the Giants regime, and it feels like until Neighbors is fully healthy, Isaiah Likely is going to be a primary target for Jackson Dart. And, between the smashing into broken walls and things, it's going to be one of those things that Isaiah Likely is going to be the best option to stretch the field. And it does feel like a situation where maybe early on, I'm going to be feeding my family with Isaiah Likely, and then maybe I have a backup option. But at a 10 ranking, I like him. I like him a lot more than a lot of other people. So much so that, I get mad when people steal him in the 10th round because I'm like, oh, I'm going to sneak him here in the 10th round. But everybody just keeps overlooking him. It's like Jackson Dart isn't a bad quarterback, and putting him in a situation, the Giants, where he has a familiarity with that offense from his time at Baltimore, like, why not let Isaiah Likely eat a little bit? So I expect good things from him.
Expect a lot of good things. My only concerns are that the Bash Bros are going to give each other a concussion headbutting after a touchdown run, and then suddenly you're going to be down a quarterback and a running back. But if they can avoid that, that will be cooking.
As long as they leave Washington with everybody in healthy at the end of the day, that's going to be the most important thing for the Giants. Like, we don't need another injury in Washington Commander Stadium or whatever they want to call it now.
We're just going to call it the graveyard. I mean, they tried to kill Jalen Hurts with the stands at one point. Like, we're going to call that the graveyard. But we can go on and on complaining about the Commander Stadium, and there's a lot we could make an entire show dedicated off, but we won't do that today because we're still continuing as college fantasy football is starting to take shape. Kelcey, you're here to help break us down even further because we're still learning. It's a little different. It's not like the NFL game. While it's similar, it is very different. So, Kelcey, you're here to educate us a little bit on the ways of fantasy football. We're going to talk offenses, everyone's favorite thing about football.
Yeah, look, I got my education in the state of Alabama, so let's not get carried away with the educating thing. But you know what they do teach in Alabama? They do teach football, and I know that very well. So that is what I know. And here's the deal. We just talked about some differences. If you didn't miss what I talked about last week, we talked about the top 3 things to know before your first draft. Talked about certain positions, different rankings, how running backs are still going to be a primary target, but in the secondary target, it is going to be quarterbacks more than receivers. That's just kind of the way the college game works itself out. The most important part we talked about was the change in a position that exists in the college football game that does not exist in the NFL fantasy game. And that is the entire offense, the team offense. So I want to talk a little bit about that today. We're going to do top 5 college football fantasy week 1 offenses. And important to note this, most college fantasy football weeks will not include week 0 in their week 1. So this will be between September 3rd through September 9th. So week 0 matchups don't count. So it is unique. It is unique. But I do have something you need to watch out for. And this is the what to know about O's. So know the top targets on your offense. That seems very obvious, right? Know who's going to be getting the ball. Know what type of scheme they run. Know how that offense calls plays, or has called plays in the past, especially the OC. Those things matter. You got to also know the opponents. If it's an FBS school, if it's a division rival or conference rival, or if it's just a big time rivalry like USC Notre Dame or something, you got to be aware of these things. It seems very apparent, but offenses suck in rivalry games, and I'll get to that one in a second. Know your strength of schedule. Like I just said, FBS, FCS, those matchups matter. And week 1, it will matter more than most. The 3 R's, your rivalries, your records, and your rankings. And I brought rivalries in here because did you know we have a Washington State matchup in week 1? Meaning you have to be aware.
I don't like it.
Yeah, you have to be aware about the Apple Cup. We all know about the historic offensive scoring in the Apple Cup at times, but also defensively, it can be a problem. You also have to be aware of records when you come to your offenses. That means you got to be aware of where a player is as approaching to a single season record or a career record at a school. Coaches don't like those to be hanging over players' heads. They want to get it out of the way. They will force feed in those situations. And rankings. You got to know the rankings for your team because you will be fooled at times, which goes into number 5, where you got to avoid the hype. Ohio State last year had finished with the 25th best offense while still being one of the best overall teams. There were only 2 Power 4 teams in the top 5 offenses last year. Neither finished ranked inside of the top 15 of the final polls. Very important stat. So don't get fooled by your rankings or the hype around a team. So with that said, here's my top 5 because I will get fooled by the hype in week 1. Number 1, Texas Tech versus number 5, I should say. Texas Tech versus Abilene Christian in week 1. Everybody makes a big deal about the Brendan Sorsby thing, and it was a big deal. But for college fantasy, Texas Tech is still loaded offensively. They returned 2 running backs who combined approached 2,000 yards rushing last year. One of them was Dickey, the other one being Williams. And on top of that, they have Quentin Joyner joining from USC, which was another 500-yard running back. So you have 3-headed monster in the backfield to give Will Hammond, who is a sophomore, a redshirt sophomore, every opportunity, who, by the way, he contributed 300 yards rushing last year as well. Will Hammond did in a backup role. So you look at potentially 3,000 rushing yards coming from their backfield returning this year. And you're going to tell me Texas Tech versus Abilene Christian, who finished last year not great in the FCS roles. If this offense doesn't look really interesting coming into week 1, It does, for my standpoint, I look at it as a situation where it's a 42.5 point spread, and you're looking at that being a big favorite. Texas Tech finished in the top 10 last year in offense. They're ranked currently in the top 5 of most preseason predictions for offense. I like everything about their rushing attack, and against an FCS opponent, this is one that they're going to be looking to make a point after the Brendan Sorsby issue. Why not make a point against FCS Abilene Christian? So be on the lookout for Texas Tech at number 5. At number 4, BYU versus Dixie State. Now, I do have to make a commentary here. Dixie State did change their name officially to being Utah Tech now. So it is the Utah Tech Trailblazers, not the Dixie State Trailblazers anymore. It is important because I guess name matters, but whatever. It is still Dixie State on the ESPN game calendar, so don't be fooled by that. BYU is a top 15 offense last year, and they returned predicted as a top 15 offense yet again behind Kalani Sitake and his play calling. He did turn down the Penn State job in the offseason, meaning he came back with reinforcements. His reinforcement just happens to wear number 47 at the quarterback position, which is still the most egregious thing in the world. And I'm going to bring it up every time I bring up BYU. But Bear Bachmeier is absolutely a powerhouse, and this BYU team is no joke offensively. And again, you match up against an FCS school. Fantasy points are ready to be had. And that is the most exciting part for BYU. But this won't be the only Utah team on this list. We'll keep going forward, but we'll get to the other Utah team here in a second. But BYU versus Dixie State / Utah Tech this year in week 1 is a great option for number 4 here for the week 1. Number 3, Tennessee versus Furman. Now, I don't have a lot of high hopes for Tennessee, but you're going against the Furman Paladins, which most people don't even know what a Paladin is. It doesn't matter. It's an FCS school. Tennessee's offense last year with Aguilar, part-time, injured, not injured, finished a number 7 offense overall. Josh Heupel loves to run it up, and he has 2 freshman quarterbacks. One's a redshirt freshman, one's a true freshman, that are looking to gain confidence. Well, no better opponent to do that against than Furman. So expect a lot of long plays, a lot of deep balls. His intention is to put up 70 between his 2 freshman quarterbacks, which means your offensive score will be fantastic. The current spread on that is 47.5 points. That will probably shrink as you get closer. But that is not the highest point spread on this list. Number 1 does have my highest point spread. By the way, BYU Dixie State. That is also 47.5. So 2 extremely high spreads. But yeah, Tennessee, while they may not have a lot going for them, Josh Heupel loves to light up the scoreboard, and he has 2 freshman quarterbacks looking to gain confidence. And this is a confidence booster week 1 before you get into that hard stretch for the SEC schedule Tennessee has, because it's not easy for them this year with a potentially worse roster than they've had before. So this is going to be one that offensively you'll like for week 1. Number 2, though, there's the other Utah school, Utah versus Idaho. Again, you'll see a trend here, FCS school. It's a thing. D1, Power 4, when they match up against FCS in week 1, there's big scores. Well, guess what? Utah was one of the 2 of the top 5 finishers in the offense last year. And yet again this year, they are ranked in the top 10 of offenses predicted for this season. They are absolutely fantastic when it comes to scoring and when it comes to racking up the yardage. And on top of that, they are replacing Kyle Whittingham, which means their new head coach has a point to prove. And like I said, you got to know your top targets. You got to know your scheme. You got to know your coach. You got to know your tendencies. Top 5 here offenses, you need to know what your coach is trying to do. And Utah's trying to prove a point that they don't need Kyle Whittingham anymore. And Kyle Whittingham has left a indelible mark on Utah. There's no doubt about it. But this new era is trying to start off with a bang against Idaho. And this offense will be trying to light up a scoreboard in Rice Eccles that has not ever been seen before in that stadium. So I do think the Utah Utes right here will be one to be looked at. And now if you're looking at a spread, this one has the lowest spread of my list, which is 32.5. But in my eyes, it has the highest opportunity because Idaho is not known as a powerhouse in the FCS level. Actually kind of far from it. So it is an opportunity for Utah, who is picked by most to finish in the top 5 of the Big 12, to really make a precedent here with their new staff, with their new regime, and impress everybody. And last but not least, number 1 on the list. Yeah, I said don't buy the hype, but guess what? You can buy this hype. It's Ohio State versus Ball State. It is the largest spread going into week 1 today. 50.5 points coming into this game. You bring back Julian Sand. You still have Jeremiah Smith. You have an entire backfield led by Bo Jackson. And I don't mean Bo Jackson from Auburn. I mean his own Bo Jackson. This Ohio State team offensively is going to be impressive. And they're going to, as Ryan Day liked to say one time, he's going to hang 100 on somebody. So Ball State, unfortunately, might be that team. This is the only non-FCS school, though, on this list that my team is facing. So that is something to be aware of. It is a MAC matchup, but it is a interesting MAC matchup for Ohio State, where they do dominate Ball State very often. It is never a good game for Ball State, and is one for Ohio State where they are returning their quarterback for the first time in 3 years, and he is looking to make a point. He was a Heisman front runner. Don't be surprised for him to be trying to set that momentum in week 1, which is the one time I'll say maybe you can buy the hype just a hair. This Ohio State versus Ball State matchup is my number 1 offense going into week 1. So when you get to your draft, maybe look for this, but maybe look to trade high as soon as this game's over for your Ohio State team.
Somebody's out there is going to stack having Julian Say and Jeremiah Smith and the Ohio State for the offense. They're going to somehow stack all of it together, and it's going to be an incredible week 1. It's going to be great. I still refuse to acknowledge BYU. I know they deserve it, but until their quarterback's not wearing number 47, I will not accept it. It is a crime against football humanity, and he needs to wear a quarterback number. He's not a fullback, but they will put up points.
If he can put up a 300-yard game, let's say 200 rushing or 200 passing, 100 rushing, 3 touchdowns, 4 touchdowns, I'll let him wear 47 against FCS opponents. That's fine. Just change it to a 17 when you play a FBS opponent.
He has to change it once the balance was back out. But before we let you get out of here too, what's the high profile offense you're avoiding at all costs as we head into week 1? What's the one where you're like, nope, don't care. They may be awesome, but I'm not touching a week 1.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say Alabama or really any team with a tough matchup. So that goes into your Clemsons, that goes into your Auburn, Baylors. Avoid those right now, because when they're a tough week 1 matchup, I tend to avoid them. There's no point playing against it. It's that Wisconsin matchup for Bama is going to be a tough one. I don't envy any of those teams when it comes to trying to pick fantasy around it. Yes, they might put up a lot of points, but it doesn't give me a lot of faith down the road. For that matter, I mentioned Washington, Wazoo. Washington and Washington State, yeah, they don't pick a team. Don't pick either one of their offenses for week 1 either, because that's not going to be a fun one either to deal with. So you just got to be aware of these things. Like I said, be aware of your matchups. Be aware of what the records are, the rivalries, and because right now with conference realignment, rivalries are weird. When you have Georgia Auburn playing in week 7 and you have Washington State playing in week 1, it doesn't make sense. You have Texas Oklahoma, I think week 4 or 5, which feels really early for a Red River rivalry. So these things just be aware of as you get closer. But yeah, week 1, those are the 2 offenses I'm probably staying away from, or I guess 3 offenses if you include Clemson in that conversation, where you don't want to get a team that's playing somebody tough right now. Don't get LSU, don't get Clemson, don't get or Alabama, don't get Wisconsin. Avoid those like a plague.
Well, I can assure you, unless Trevor Lawrence or Hunter Renfro's walking through that door, I will not be touching anything Clemson related anytime soon. Now that it's been very ugly recently. But Kelcey, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again later in the show for our fantasy mailbag. But now coming up next, we're going to turn to the degeneracy. We're going to talk a little bit of gambling with Brian's Best Bets, presented by Better Vision. More on them coming up in the future. But for Brian's Best Bets, last week we talked about AFC win totals, So spoiler alert, we're going to talk about NFC win totals today. So Brian, glad to have you join us here. You ready to talk NFC win totals? We ready to start annoying some fan bases?
That's my conference, so yeah, love to talk about it.
All right, let's go ahead and get ready to get into it. So the first one we're going to look at is going to be the Cardinals. So for the Cardinals, they are set at 3.5 right now for over/under. So Brian, are we going over or are we going under?
Well, this is, I think, one of the lowest win totals in recent memory. I can't remember the last time I saw a team with a 3.5. It's crazy that they start with a 4.5, so all the money is against it. But I am going to go with the under here. I know that's crazy, but the Cardinals have a super hard schedule this year. I don't trust Jacoby Brissett to repeat what he did last year. I know there's a lot of talent, with guys like Marvin Harrison, but he's dropping a lot of balls in practice. Basically, it's going to be Jeremiah Love, the only person on offense. So give me the under. It's going to be a historically bad year for the Arizona Cardinals.
And for those that didn't see last week's segment, is that one you're putting money on, or is that just
no? I'm not putting money on that one. That one's just too low. It's too low.
I understand it's hard. So you can stumble into 4 wins by accident out of 17. That one's dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
How about Atlanta though? It's 6.5, which I think is interesting. How are we feeling? Low, under, or over for Atlanta?
I think I'm gonna go over with the Falcons on this one. Look, they have a new it's basically gonna be what can Kevin Stefanski do for this offense. He's gonna have Bijan Robinson. He's gonna have, I think Tua's gonna named the week 1 starter. So if he can recommend Tua, they could easily rattle off some wins here in a rather weak NFC South.
Hear me out on this one. Michael Penix is very injury prone. Tua, we already know is injury prone.
Yeah.
He needs to find a way to just trade for Dylan Gabriel. Round out the left-handed trifecta in that quarterback room. He
Why
already loves
not?
Dylan Gabriel. Like, you won't have to change any of the offensive plays. So it's all going to the left. Nothing will change. I'm just saying go for it at this point, but I digress. But I like over two. I think they're very interesting. Let's go to Carolina, the surprising winners of the NFC South last year that absolutely nobody had on their bingo card, not even Carolina fans. Set at 7.5 for the over-under, but you're getting plus odds on the over.
Can I just say that I love the Carolina Panthers offense? I don't know what it is. I know their schedule is tough this year. I think it's like ESPN has it as 23, so that would be, I think, the 9th or 11th hardest schedule. I don't know. Math's hard, but I love the Panthers. I love McMillan. I love that running back room with Hubbard and Jonathan Brooks coming back this year. I think if Bryce Young could just be a game manager, they're going to be, I think, in the running to win that division. So give me the over. I think they could go 500.
And they spent an absolute rip on defense, too. So hopefully they can get a stop on occasion. And that secondary, you can ask the Rams, it is absolutely no joke for sure. The Chicago Bears, speaking of surprise teams from worst to first, the one team that nobody had at worst to first going into last year, and sure enough, they pulled it off, set at 9.5 with a plus 100, and every article and Liam Cohen and Ben Johnson will be the first to tell you the top regression candidate. So over under for the Chicago soon-to-be Hammond Bears.
Yeah, I can't believe that. They're pulling the Giants. As someone that knows about their team playing different city, it's nice to have another one of us. But I'm going under with the Bears. They have the hardest schedule, according to ESPN. I think their opponent had a 550 win percentage last year. Caleb Williams, while he is a very clutch quarterback, they had, I think, 7 or 8 fourth quarter wins. That's something that cannot be repeat going into 2026. I know they had a lot of, signings this offseason, but Kobe Bryant's already hurt, so that's going to take, that's a big loss for them. I think the Bears are going to be a good team, but I think they're going to be more like, a 9 or 8 win team, not double digits.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a rough repeat, especially in that division where the bottom of the chain was at 9 wins. So it's going to be hard with that division. I'll get there. Have we had one that you're ready to put money on yet? Are we still waiting for the money ones? Are those still?
I want to put money on the Panthers. I'll put money on the Panthers going over.
We'll put money on the Panthers going over. All right, plus odds for the Panthers too. That feels pretty good. Said to Kelcey's reluctant team, the Dallas Cowboys set at 9.5, coming off of an interesting season with an outstanding offense led by George Pickens. Never thought I'd say that out loud. And defensive holes, but they've done their best to retool it, bringing in Caleb Downs and Cruz. So how do we feel about the Dallas Cowboys?
I think the Cowboys will go over. I love Caleb Downs for them, as the Giants fan, that does pay him to say. But look, Prescott is one of the most. It's funny that we're calling a quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys a bit underrated because he gets so much hate, but he's such a solid quarterback to have. He's not flashy, but he just does everything right with the weapons they have. They'll fall for it. I'm not going to put money on it, but I'm definitely taking the over for them this year. I could see them being favorites to win the NFC East.
Absolutely. And for no other reason than all of the Eagles receivers are getting hurt right now.
Exactly.
That helps that. And we'll get to the rest of the NFC East coming up as well. But first, let's head back to the North with the Detroit Lions. One of everybody's favorite targets to go from worst to first, set at 10.5 for the over under. You would think they won more than 10 games last year, but they did not. Do they get off the schneid though?
I think they go off the mat. I think they're going over this year. Look, you had to expect some sort of, regression last year with losing both their coordinators. But this year, health's on their side. I think, Dan Campbell is a good leader, man. He's going to ride his team again. I think they go over that 10.5 win and win the NFC North.
I'm saying it now. Drew Petzing is the offensive coordinator. Either is going to get fired by October and we're going to see Dan Campbell take over again, or Sam Laporta is about to set all sorts of records. He is going to force feed the giant guy on the end of the line of scrimmage, guaranteed. Green Bay Packers from 9-3 to 9-8 after the Micah Parsons injury, and it was not very pretty, and epic playoff losses, set at 9.5. They will be missing Micah for at least a little bit. How do we feel about that?
I think they're going under. Like you said, that defense took such a step back when Micah Parsons got hurt. And the fact that he's out again, I think they'll get off to a bit of a slow start. They have the 4th hardest schedule in all of football, so that's brutal. I think they go off to a slow start. I go under, and I'll put money on that.
Ooh, all right, under. What's funny is they've won 9 games like 3 years in a row, so this would hit at 9 wins. They snuck in the playoffs at 9-8 as the 7th seed, I think 2 or 3 years in a row. So This could be a fun money win that doesn't fully piss off Packer fans.
Nope.
Let's move on down now. We got a whole host of AFC. The Super Bowl favorites, the Los Angeles Rams, with I believe the highest win total or tied for, set at 11. Tied at 11.5. How are we feeling about the Los Angeles super team?
Look, I mean, even with regression of Matt Stafford that we all expect this year, I'm taking the over. There's really not a hole on this roster. They brought in a great quarterback in McDuffie. They have the best defensive player, Myles Garrett. Like, there is no hole on this team. So the only thing that might slip up the Rams is if they lose week 1 in Australia. They're having a very weird travel schedule. I could see them being kind of asleep for game 2 that Monday night against the Giants. I don't think that's going to happen, but I could see a world where they start 0-2, but I think they'll be fine and rebound. So give me over 11.
On the same team, we have the reigning MVP, the reigning defensive player of the year, the reigning all-pro corner, the reigning touchdown receiving leader, and a separate receiver who is the leading receiver as far as receptions goes. Like
Madden won't even let you do something like that.
A plethora of riches, and it can all go to heck if Matthew Stafford sneezes a little bit too hard and throws his back out, because he's at the age where that is a real problem. So that's a very unique team for sure. Let's head to the Minnesota Vikings, not last in the division, and 9 no longer the starters. It will be Kyler Murray as the starter heading into week 1, at least set at 8.5. So do they get 9 wins without 9, or are we going under?
I think they'll get over, because I think, Kevin O'Connell is just great at these reclamation projects, and he's never had someone that he could utilize like Kyler Murray. Like, he could expand this offense to do, more run plays, more kind of, spread. And with those weapons and Kyler Murray be able to scramble, they could get some serious chunk yard plays. So I think the Vikings will steal a few games. I'm going over.
What I love about the NFC North is nobody in that division plays defense besides the Vikings. And even their defense is very spotty. 1 week, Brian Flores is in his bag, destroying Brock Purdy's soul. Then the next week, he's getting diced up by Caleb Williams or Jared Goff. So there's going to be a lot of points of plethora in this division.
They're doing the best Big 12 impression from back in the day.
Absolutely. And almost Super Bowl MVP, Juwan Jennings, also a signing for the Minnesota Vikings as well. So that receiver room continues to get deeper.
Mm-hmm.
New Orleans Saints, the hot pick for a lot of people to make a jump to the playoffs, with 37-year-old Tyler Shuck at quarterback going to year 2, as well as Jordan Tyson, the first-round pick, Travis Etienne in the offseason, Chris Olave looking healthy as well. How do you feel about the New Orleans Saints?
This might be a shock. I'm going with the under. I don't love what I saw from Tyler Shuck. He played weaker opponents last year, and I think it kind of elevated his numbers. We had to expect some regression from Chris Olave. I know they have one of the easier schedules, but I could see a sophomore slump hitting this team hard and then kind of undoing all the positive momentum they had from last year.
All right, we are going under with the New Orleans Saints. The Big Easy's not thrilled to hear that. I got to wonder how much developing Tyler Shuck can do when he's almost my age, and I am in no position to be taking NFL snaps.
Right.
All right, Brian, this one hits close to home. We're going with your New York Football Giants, also set at 7.5. I think I know the answer, but I need to hear you say it.
I have been racking my brain back and forth with this all day. I think I'm going with the over, but here's my thing. This team's floor is 7 wins. The ceiling is like 9. Like, that is what this team is. They are going to be scrappy. They're going to win some games they're not supposed to, because Harbaugh is actually developing a culture in New York. And they had Pat Leonard today on a podcast said it's the most professional training camp has looked since Coughlin was there. So that makes you think that there's some sort of culture being developed there. But the Giants are still a year or 2 away. So I think I'm going over, but I'm not confident in it.
There'll be no money on that one. The over, they picked the right number for this one at 7.5. They picked the right one for sure.
They nailed it. They 100% nailed it.
All right, we're gonna go to one that I'm sure will make some people annoyed. The Philadelphia Eagles set at 10.5, but you are getting plus odds if you go with the over. I got a feeling, but I'm gonna let you say it.
I'm going with the under. Look, and maybe this is a little biased. If you watched any of my content, you know my feelings about the city of Philadelphia as a whole. But they're coming off a season last year where they were one of the worst offenses. I know they fired Kevin Patullo, but they lost A.J. Brown. There's questions about that receiving corps with the injuries going on now. Devontae Smith has never been a receiver one. Malachi Lemon is a complete unknown. And there are questions about Jalen Hurts' ability to throw the football and not rely on running the football. And Saquon Barkley's another year older. So the Eagles' offense just kind of feels like this ticking time bomb. Their defense is still great, but I can see this team struggling and the under.
They're gonna have a weird season. They're gonna have a weird season where the games they're bad, they're gonna be historically bad. But the games they are on, they're gonna drop 40 points and have 300 yards across the board to balance it out. To at the end of the season, they'll look okay. They'll be like, oh, that was a decent season. But those who watched, they knew better. Like there was pain there. But let's move on now to the San Francisco Substation 49ers, set at 9.5. That's about as many players that are healthy on the roster right now. Are we going over or under for the 49ers?
I'm going with the under because there's definitely, I think I've read somewhere that 25% of the roster is already dealing with injury. And that's a lot of guys like, Mike Evans, that offense is completely shattered. And let's not forget that Shanahan got into a really bad car accident and is still feeling the effects of it. They said that he's having a hard time at like practice with all the noise and stuff. I'm like, and I know the season's still like a month out, but how much is this going to affect him this year? His like decision making's delayed. Like that could have real ripple effects going into this year. So from all the injuries to the uncertainty of how Shanahan's health is, I'm going with the under.
Absolutely. That one I would agree with. I'm not touching the 49ers in fantasy and gambling or in anything. Like I'm avoiding them like the plague. All right, we're gonna go to Kevin. Seattle Seahawks and the reigning Super Bowl champions set at 10.5. Losing Super Bowl MVP Kenneth Walker. However, that was kind of be expected. Over or under for the defending champions?
I'm going with the over because I think they found something in Sam Darnold. He knows how to run that offense. I know Clint Kubiak's gone, but I think they'll be fine with there. I love the addition of Jadarian Price to this team. I know Jeremiah Love got all the attention at Notre Dame, but if you watch Price, he was such a reliable number 2 and probably could have led that running attack and had to be one of the best in the nation had he been taken over. He could be used in the pass game, in the run game. I think it's going to be a focal point of that offense. And then we have one of the best years in JSN. You're going to be a good team. I like the Seahawks. Over.
And Mike McDonald is like Dexter's laboratory when it comes to cooking up absolutely diabolical defensive schemes that just confuse everybody. Like no matter, just give him 11 bodies and he's going to be a problem. And plus, Devin Witherspoon's one of the best in the league. So
and I'll put money on that over.
Ooh, all right, we're getting there. Let's move on now to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Baker will be going to this without a new contract, and he has said they're going to pay one way or the other, which we'll see how that goes. But set at 8.5 for the over-under, the first time in almost half a decade that they did not make the playoffs, and fourth year in a row they did not win the division for the fifth year in a row. They won the division 4 years in a row. They did not make it 5. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say.
So I'm going with the under, and I'm going to put money on this one too. There is just so much drama surrounding the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like we talked about the Eagles being a time bomb. The Buccaneers are like the time bomb where it's like counting down 3, 2, 1 because Vita Vea is already upset. He demanded a trade. Baker Mayfield is, being, cryptic and all this sort of stuff. And while I respect Baker for it, if he gets banged up, he won't take himself out, which will cause struggling. That will hurt the team. And I also just don't like Todd Bowles as a coach. I don't think he is a good leader. He can't build a culture. Great defensive coordinator, just can't. He can't hold the team together when things fall apart, and that's why I'm going with the under. I think the season falls apart for them.
I also just have a weird vendetta against the fact that Todd Bowles is also listed as their defensive coordinator. Like I know other teams like Sean McVay calls the players, calls the offense, but they at least have an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, there's someone there.
They literally does not have a defensive coordinator. It is literally just Todd Bowles, which I don't know why they like that, but they're going to be in a interesting spot for sure. But let's round things out with the Washington Commanders set at 7.5. Jaden Daniels, as of right now, healthy again. We'll see how long it continues. Stephon Diggs, newly added to the team. Hopefully he's not on any boats. What do we think about Washington? A lot of money spent on defense.
So Washington, I've said this, is a team that I think could either win a Super Bowl or get the first overall pick. And either way, I'd be like, yeah, that made sense. So, because like if Daniels is healthy, that offense, can get humming. They'll win some games. But, if his career unfortunately goes down a Robert Griffin the third path, which it possibly could, they'll struggle. I'll go over because it's kind of low. I think this is probably similar territory with the Giants, like an 8 to 10 win team. I'll go over, but like I said, they're so boom or bust for me.
That makes sense for sure. And I will stand by Rachaad White as my fantasy sleeper of the season. I will stand by it. I'm not saying he'll be great, but I'm saying he'll be worthwhile taking. So let's go and take a look at what some of the ones that you are putting money on for now. We are looking at Carolina over 7.5, Green Bay under 9.5, Seattle over 10.5, and Tampa Bay under 8.5. So Some very interesting overall odds. If it were, they can't be parlayed together right now, unfortunately, so we can't go full degeneracy. But there is some very interesting ones there. If you are looking to place money, bet smarter, not harder, and go odds shopping at Better Vision as well. But Brian, thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to have you join us here again later for the fancy mailbag. So definitely stick around for that. And joining me now, we're going to have senior Belly Up Fantasy writer Kevin Wilson joining me now on the stage. We're going to talk Dynasty because the Dynasty drafts are about to get underway, both startups as well as ones that are continuing with the rookies. Kevin, you're going to tell us what we need to know as we head into these Dynasty drafts.
Okay, well, the first thing you need to know, if you're already involved in a Dynasty team, you need to decide, am I going to be competitive this year or not? And you're the only one that can decide that. And once you come to that decision, then moving forward, this is going to make sense to you. And while you and Brian were talking, I was like, I'm going to start in this spot. And then you were talking further, and I'm like, well, I'm going to go to this spot now. And then you talk further, and so I'm just going to go to what he was just talking about a minute ago. And one of the players that I really like, even though I'm a Seahawk guy, everybody knows that. But when it comes to running backs, I really like Price. I like him this year way better than Love. And the reason why I say that is because Love, as Brian talked about, is going to be on an awful football team this year. And not only that, he's got players behind it. He's not even right now, it'll change, of course. He's not even on the depth chart, he's not even ranked number 1. That's Tyler Algiers. And even if you take him out, then you've got James Conner, then you got Trey Benson over there. And that's just too many mouths for me. And so I get, if you're not in contention right now and you go ahead and take Love, that's fine. But if you can wait a little bit, if your draft is a little bit later in that, and you can get Price, I would do that. He's going to the better team, even though they just announced that they're going to run a committee at running back, which shouldn't surprise anyone because that's exactly what they did a year ago. And that's why Kenneth Walker was so fresh when he got to the playoffs. And so they're going to do that. But even with that said, I like Price. I think he's going to have a much better year this year. So if you're trying to decide between those two running backs, I'm going with Price right now. And so the other position I was wanting to get into was wide receiver. And I'm sorry to have to disagree with Brian Wright from the opening shoot here, but I disagree with what he was saying about the Saints. I like that offense that they're going to have. Tyler Shuck, I see that no one saw what he was doing a year ago. He's got a year 2. He's going to be better. And so a lot of people have Cardinal Tate, Tennessee's wide receiver, ranked number 1. I do not. I've got Jordan Tyson ranked number 1 simply because I think it's going to be a better offense. And most importantly, he's got Chris Olave over on the other side, which is going to draw coverage over there. I've liked him ever since he got drafted, and except for when he was injured, he has delivered every way you could possibly say. So I really, really, really like Jordan Tyson this year. And if I was on the clock and I had to choose between one of those two guys, I'm going with Jordan Tyson. And so, because Cardinal Tate, Tennessee has one of the worst passing offenses over the past few years. And, of course, Cam Ward will be better, but I don't trust that offense. It'll be better, but I'm not ready to say, yay, Tennessee, just yet. And if you perchance, Mekhi Lemon landed in the perfect spot for a wide receiver. Brown's gone now, but he's had all kinds of hamstring issues in camp so far that really concerns me right now. So if you're in contention, I don't know if that's what you're going to want to do on draft day is to take him. If in longer term, I think that'll work out. This year, I'm not so sold on that. And so if perchance you're looking to contend, how about KC Concepcion? I like what he's brought in camp. He's looked great. Cleveland's offense can't be nearly that bad this year. Whoever's going to be their quarterback. And so I really like what they're doing over there. And so I think he's going to be a fine selection on draft day. And another one is Omar Cooper of the New York Jets. And the question that has to be answered with this guy is the Jets can't have it both ways, because they're talking about running a 3 wide receiver set, and they're talking about running a 2 tight end set. You can't have both of those at the same time. So watching and when we get into the games, what kind of offense are these guys going to run? You can't have that. Cooper is third on their depth chart behind Garrett Wilson and Adonai Mitchell. So pay attention to what they're doing. And was it Kenyon? Sadiq? What kind of offense are they going to have? Because you don't want both of these guys on your team. So keep an eye on that. And when it comes to the quarterback position, if you're in contention, you're not looking to draft any of these guys. Whether it's Mendoza or Ty Simpson, especially not Ty Simpson, or the latest, Carson Beck. Everybody was throwing popcorn up in the air because of what he did last week in the Hall of Fame game. Let me just, give it to everybody. It was the Hall of Fame game. Okay. So everybody's sitting there and they're anointing him as the starter in Arizona. Let's cool that a little bit. Okay. And so if you're in the second round or third round and any of these guys, Mendoza's not going to be available past the first round. But if you're if you're contending, and you can put any of these guys are going to go on your taxi squad. So just be aware of that. And so those are the guys that I really wanted to highlight. And I just want to give a shout out to my man Kelcey over there, brought up 2 Utah teams. So I'm all behind him on that one. And Brian brought up the Seahawks. I'm definitely behind what he's selling there. So, but those were the guys that I wanted to highlight in the Dynasty section. Just make sure you make this decision. Am I contending or am I not? Because that's going to affect every single draft pick that you make from here on out.
And whatever choice you go with, you stick to it. You can't change
your
your
mind.
mind.
That's right. Absolutely, you can't change that. Mid-draft.
You commit to the bowl. But we do have a question from Sir Kelcey as well. Speaking of Dynasty, Elijah Surratt or Jacoby Lane, a better Dynasty option for the Ravens? I'll let you lead the way on this one. Which one are you kind of leaning towards?
Well, the Ravens is an interesting team because, they got a new coach over there. And so I'm going to kind of punt on this one until we see some kind of action in the exhibition games. Mm-hmm. And what kind of offense are they going to run? And just because John Harbaugh, even though I disagreed with where he ran that team last year, especially with the running back position, and they had one of the great running backs and they didn't use them like they were supposed to. But they had a good offense. They've had a good offense in recent years. So I'm going to say, post this question to me next week after we've seen some action right here. And because the Ravens are an unanswered question to me. And we need to see what kind of offense they're going to bring on before we make any judgment about their players pretty much overall, except for Lamar Jackson, of course. But other than that, we need to see what they're going to do in the preseason.
For sure. All the training camp reports have been raving about Jacoby Lane, trying to say he's the best rookie they've seen in Ravens camp ever. So that means I'm going to take Elijah Surratt.
Okay, I can buy that because the hype machine gets out of control.
Exactly. Surratt at IU he's 6'5" and just catches touchdowns, which that's always seems like a safe bet. But we've rounded out Dynasty. Now we're going to bring back Kelcey and Brian to the stage as we're now heading to the fantasy mailbag where we'll be answering a couple of questions from those who are nice enough to comment there. So we're going to go and start with one we got on Facebook from last week's show. We're going to skip the first part that says, what would your top 5 receivers would you pick this year for fantasy? Just because I'm going to go into that next week. Next week's rankings receivers. Spoiler, guys. So I won't go into that one. But we're going to go with part 2 of this one. Are there any rookies that stand out amongst the rest? Kevin, you did go into a couple of them in Dynasty, so I'm going to have the others go first. So, Kelcey, I'll leave with you. What rookies stand out to you going into this year that you really like?
Yeah, if it's receivers, I stand by my question, which Elijah Sherrod or Jacoby Lane as my two that are very interesting for this. Kevin mentioned it. Like, we don't really know what's to be expected, but we know this is the first time that we're actually having real conversations about Ravens receivers in the preseason for Lamar Jackson. Like, it's a real conversation to be had that he actually has talent at the receivers now. It's not Rashad Bateman, go save us. Like, it's actual guys that have proven it at the college level. It's real dudes. And yes, there's the Zay Flowers getting paid situation. Like, that helps in the conversation. But your number 2 option and your number 3 option when you don't have Isaiah Likely anymore make me question which one's going to be better. Or maybe they're both going to be used equally as well in different ways. Like, maybe Elijah Surratt's a touchdown guy. Jacoby Lane's the 20-20 guy. Like, maybe they're the yardage dudes. Like, I don't really know how it's going to work out, but those are to me, the two I find the most intriguing for this entire offseason conversation around rookies. Because Kevin mentioned a lot of the other guys that I do find interesting, and I have drafted like 95% of them across different leagues. But these are the two I keep coming back to, especially late in the draft, that I'm like, I don't know which one I want more because I've drafted both. I just don't know which one I want more.
It's interesting as they're both 6'4", 6'5" guys, and Zay Flowers is like 5'9". So, when they get in the red area, chances are they're not throwing a fade to Zay Flowers. So I think that's going to open up a lot of touchdown opportunities for both of them early on. Brian, how about you? What are some rookies that you're really liking going into the season?
Well, Kevin touched on it. Kelcey Concepcion, I love him in Cleveland. I don't care about that quarterback situation. I think that whoever's throwing the ball to him will figure it out. He averaged like 15 yards a catch at Texas A&M last year. I think it's going to bring that explosive play to Cleveland. And I also love Malachi Fields. Like, I loved him at Notre Dame. Love him for the Giants. I know he's kind of buried on the depth chart right now, but he and Jackson Dart have got a great repertoire right now. I think he caught like 4 passes from Dart today. So they're getting connection. He's 6'3", 6'4", which is like the tall wide receiver, the one type of build the Giants don't have. So a lot of 50-50 balls he's going to get, touchdown zones. And, the Giants have the guys ahead of him, Odell Beckham Jr., Darnell Mooney, Calvin Austin. No offense to those guys, but we all kind of know what they are. Malachi Fields can establish himself very quickly. He can be wide receiver 2 by, the end of the season. So I really think he's going to be an underrated piece for your team.
Yeah, I like it. And before I get in mine, Kevin, I'm going to have you go first. There's anyone you wanted to retouch on, or maybe anyone we didn't mention?
Well, Brian, you just mentioned about Concepcion. He averaged 16.4 yards per catch.
That's insane.
That's really going to stretch the field. And I really wasn't looking when he went late in the draft. I was like, well, okay, maybe not. But I'm getting more sold as I find out more about this guy. And so, if I have a choice later, maybe in the draft, I'm taking Concepcion over some of these other guys because I really because they worked on their offensive line, Cleveland did, and so their offense has to be better. Couldn't be any worse, possibly. And it doesn't matter who the quarterback is, he's going to get that ball to Concepcion. So I really like him coming into the season.
Absolutely. They just get him the ball in space. They could force feed him like we saw Wan'Dale Robinson last year. Just let him get the ball in space and be a punt returner. I'm going to dig into the depths for this one. I want to go Jeremy Bernard, the receiver with the Steelers. There's already reports that he is struggling at camp, which makes me like him all that much more because when Steelers have receivers that have reports negative about them, good things tend to happen on the field. And it's saying that he's having issues with the playbook, quote unquote, issues with blocking. They also said Jamar Chase couldn't catch the ball as a rookie. So whenever there's a bad report about a rookie, I like it. So we're going to start there. And he's also kind of like a sawed-off Deebo Samuel. Sometimes you get the ball, let him just run through people. Aaron Rodgers is not holding that ball. He's not letting a defender touch him. So that does bode well for getting the ball to him and Michael Pittman. So I like Jeremy Bernard as kind of a late rookie in redraft or in Dynasty. Just grab him and let's see what happens. Maybe like midseason somehow Michael Pittman gets hurt, DK Metcalf runs out of candy, whatever happens to where Jeremy Bernard can get on the field. So we do have one other question we'll get to as well. With everyone so high on the Bears, they're seeming to go so early in fantasy drafts. Not everyone can live up to their draft spot. You can see like 6 Bears players go within the first 10 rounds very easily. Who is the one that we should avoid drafting, especially at their price? You know what, Kevin, I'm going to have you lead the way with this one since I had you go last this time.
Okay, so I'm going to go with the quarterback here because there are so many guys that you can get that are a little bit later in the draft that I think he's going to recess a little bit. And everybody's still thinking about the one pass that he threw against the Rams, and they're thinking that this guy's going to blow the ever-living doors off the place. I'm not buying into that. He's going to be fine, but somebody's going to be wanting to take this guy way earlier than I'd be willing to do so. So if there was a guy on this team that's not going to measure up to his ADP, it to me has to be the quarterback.
Kelcey, I know how much you're a Caleb Williams fan at heart, so I'm going to let you follow up. Is Caleb Williams also your guy?
Sorry, Kelcey, sorry.
No, I can't stand Caleb Williams. Let's not get it twisted. He's a really good quarterback.
Okay,
He's a really good quarterback, but I don't buy the hype around him ever. But no, I do agree a lot with Kevin with what he's saying. I do think there's a regression that happens in quarterbacks just naturally. It's just we see it in CJ Stroud, right? That's the best example we've had most recently. Exceptional rookie year, falls off the cliff. Whereas his clip was small. Let's be honest. It wasn't as bad as a lot of people make it out to be. He just turned the ball over. That's his problem. And Caleb does still have those tendencies to turn the ball over. So I do get that. But for me, it's actually, I'm going to go the running back position. I think it's DeAndre Swift. I don't love DeAndre Swift as a starting NFL quarterback or running back to begin with. I definitely don't love him as a quarterback, but as a running back, I don't like him at all. And I do think there is more to be had behind him in the depth chart for the Bears at running back than there is with DeAndre Swift. I think DeAndre Swift is a great guy to get third down scat yards, to catch the ball out of the backfield. That's absolutely fantastic. He gets the ball in sweeps. He can make moves in the open field, but you have to get him there. He won't get there himself. That's something that goes back to his Georgia days. It's not new. It's not changed. It was in Detroit. It was evident. It's evident again in the Bears. Like, it is just who he is. That is his DNA. And that is not a problem when you're not the primary back. When you're the primary back, running between the tackles matters. And that's the one time where I look at the Bears offense where they stutter. It is running between the tackles more than anything else. So DeAndre Swift to me is where I see the regression in this offense, where I just don't see him being the guy going forward, especially fantasy wise. I feel like the ADP on him is still way too high when you have better options across the NFL that are going to be equal value and probably get more touchdown value out of some of the other guys that are drafted around him than you would out of DeAndre Swift, which is, I think, the big part going into this year. I don't think DeAndre Swift is going to score any touchdowns. So that's two things.
It's up to you, Brian. Do we go with DeAndre Swift? Do we go with Caleb Williams, or do you got a different one to throw at us?
Well, I agree 100% with DeAndre Swift. I love Kyle Monangai behind him. He's going like, I think 101 is like his average draft value. I think he will blow that out of the water this year. I think he could steal that RB1 job from DeAndre Swift. But I'll give you someone else. I'll give you Roma Doomsday. I know he was the 8th overall pick, but I think he's going to be like the third receiving option behind like Luther Burden and Colson Loveland in that offense. And, he regressed last year a little bit. And in the same area, you have guys behind him like Cardell Tate, DK Metcalf, Courtland Sutton, even Marvin Harrison, like all guys that I think have higher upside. So I'd rather go with one of them than a Doomsday who at best is going to be the third receiver.
Well, we all seem to go in different directions, so I'm going to keep the trend going as well, because what fun would it be if I agreed with anybody? I'm going to take the antithesis. I'm going to say Luther Burden, actually. And that's not because he is awesome. My problem is he's the second highest going Bear. None of us said Colston Loveland for a reason. Because A, he's awesome, and B, tight ends are a premium. So there's a reason none of us directly said him. But
safety blankets, man. Safety blankets matter.
Exactly.
That's right.
I like Luther Burden. I think he's awesome. His ADP is 39. I think him and Roma Dunze are actually very close in value. I think their stats are going to be close, and Roma Dunze is at like 69 right now. Like, there's not a 30-player gap between the two of them. And he's injured right now with the groin, so he's going to miss most of preseason training camp. We saw him play like 17 and a half downs last year. They were great downs. We just didn't see a lot of them, so a lot of his projection. So I'm going to pick Luther Burden as the one that I'm going to fade just because of his ADP. If he's there at pick 55 instead of 39, then we run to the bank with that, no problem. But I don't like taking him at 39. I feel iffy with it, especially when there are so many mouths to feed. We all gave a different option for a regression candidate, and they can all be right. They could all be very wrong. So I think that's
it could be Colson Loveland.
Exactly. It could be Kyle Monangai. Who knows? It could be Jedi Barron could end up leading the team in receptions, wearing number 22 as a receiver just to make me mad. But that's what we have for the fantasy mailbag. If you all want to be featured in next week's fantasy mailbag, be sure to comment on any of the live streams or any of our social posts, or just send us a DM on any social media platforms. We'll try and get you featured next week. I am DJ, my co-host Kelcey with High Low Sports. We have Brian Germanaro from the 3rd and 10 podcast, as well as Fantasy Live host, and Kevin Wilson, senior Belly Up Fantasy writer and host with Belly Up Fantasy Live. We appreciate y'all so much for joining us, and we'll see you all again next week.